Okay. Raise base, yes? Raise base. So he's summarizing the Maimon and continues. So the main body of the Mishkan is the Kroshim, the boards. You should make the boards for the Mishkan, Shittim wood, standing upright. Vayabaz explains in the Maimon in Perek Gimel and going further, Shatze Shittim or Gam Lashon Shtus. Shittim is Lashon Shtus Fali. Shezer Shomer Azal. Ein Adam Ever Aveda Elim Kenichnas Beruach Shtus. A person wouldn't sin unless the spirit of Fali entered in Mikiluli Zois. If not for this Ruach Shtus, I call Echad Mi Yisrael Leishayich Lasis Chas V'Sholem Eze Inyan She'ene Kadotzin Aveda. No one is shaykh to do something Chas V'Sholem contrary to Hashem's will. But Lashon Azoy, the Zoya teaches when Nefesh Kisechta in the Parshas Vayikra, at the very beginning, the Korban Chatos, or rather, what Korbanos one can bring, what animals. So the phraseology lends itself to a question. And Nefesh Kisechta Tavo, it's a rhetorical question. Is it possible that a yin should sin? That's what the pasuk is saying. And it's talking about a shogeg inadvertent. Even a shogeg, a sin done not consciously, in Mulkivin Shlayunda the Tzaddik Kol Oven, since as the pasuk says, no iniquity happens, no sin happens to any tzaddik, and that's talking about even a sin b'shogeg. That's why I have to bring a korban. To bring a korban, even though was unintentional. But the fact that it happens, it means on some subtle level that I'm shaykhis to it. If I didn't have a connection to it, it couldn't even happen inadvertently. Which is why a korban is necessary. For the oimikara, for the most subtle ra. But to a tzaddik, even the shogeg doesn't happen. And that's the question of the Zoya, how is this possible? So therefore, an Aveda is something that arouses wonder in Teiras Emes, the Teiras Chayim. He's stressing here that this is not an exaggeration, but it's objectively true, the question. And Teiras Chayim means that it's a truth that is part of our life. So how does it happen? Because of the Ruach Shtus. It's not the Yid. He's not shaykhus to it. He just allows, he has the choice. He allows the Ruach Shtus to distract him. And what's the origin of the Shtus? The origin of the Shtus is rooted in the big lie of the world. What's the big lie of the world? Even though the Eibush is the only truth, the Rambam explains, what does it mean that God is the truth? There's no other truth but the Eibishter. What does it mean? He explains indeed so. He explains in Perek Harish and Hilchas Yeseidat Torah that he's the only truth because he's the truth, and everything else only exists because he wants it to, and therefore it has no intrinsic truth to its existence. Pasha, the Yeseidas of Chassidus are there in the opening halachas of Yichus Yeseidat Torah. So that's the emes. However, the problem, of course, is that Indians if it shall have the has is concealed, it's serech bis bonnet is bechabad, and we need to think about this and not a cursory not flirtation, but consideration of this truth, but has to be yisbon and this in Chabad, Chochma, Bina, and Das. Everyone said this, that Psak Din Rambam, that every Yid has to be a Chabad Chosid, and will be a Chabad Chosid, because when Mashiach comes, Mo Lord, it's Deus Hashem. These were statements that were said during the Svarim trial. In Heitev Svarim trial, the Agmas Nefesh touched the Rebbe's core, and he said things during that time that were never said before or after about himself, Chabad, the Eibishter for that matter, Atzmis Diki Inyonim, and about what a Rebbe is. So you need Chabad, and he brings in the square brackets the Rambam's quoting the Rambam, we're commanded to love in awe of Hashem. You can't command an emotion. You can command allegiance in practice, and the other person who's being commanded, if they have the willingness, they will do so. But even if they have the willingness, they can't summon a feeling if they don't have it. And yet, the Eibishter commands us to love him. The Rambam explains how. She's born, these are the direct quote. Because she's burning an Adam, the myself, and a person thinks into the Eibishter's deeds, etc. The Yidam and Chachmosay and sees his wisdom, etc. Leid Hashem to know him. So these meditations, these appreciations, these awarenesses that in Chachma, Bin and Das engender the feelings of love and reverence and so on. So that's what's required. That's the tool by which we dissolve the concealment, and to reveal the truth of emes havaylim. So the big sheker is that I'm also something. That's the sheker, which conceals, doesn't deny there is a God, but he just makes him impotent. So the Eibishter, but Adka until here, and now I start. So that is the sheker that we have to. That's the shtus. The result is the shtus that's rooted in the sheker that we have to transform. So for saying, so this thing of making the boards out of atzishitim, we take the folly of the world, which is bound up with the lie of the world, which is what? That denies the truth of Hashem being the only truth. And we make them krashel in Mishkan. We've addressed this before in the previous Maimorim, the BASI, the GANI Maimorim. What does it mean to transform a lie? A lie is not transformed. The lie is exposed. It's done away with. Sheker. He's saying no. He's saying, I'm going to take the sheker and make it kroshim, a keresh. And the other illusion is a kesher, a bond. So how you can take the lie, it's a lie. It's a lie. You can't transform a lie. So the emphasis is we're learning in the previous Maimer. Huh?
Not like making Mazid Shogeg.
Not exactly. So taking Mazid Shogeg is using the sin as the fuel to be very passionate and devoted to Mesiras Nefesh in Torah mitzvahs. I did this, so he's moved so to the core of his being that it fuels. So there's a transformation in that sense. In the sense that where does this passion and devotion, Mesiras Nefesh, come from? It's because he sinned. So the sin is the fuel. It's like vegetation that's rotting, which is what a sin now becomes the means to fertilize, to create a lush harvest. But here, so it's not really transforming the sin. The sin's a sin. But here he's saying to transform the sheker mamash and make the sheker. So the nekuda is that what's the whole sheker? The sheker is me. That I'm independent. And what's the kasher? Yes, you. Yeah, that the yesha miti is nisgala dafka the yesha nivra, and it's a little tweak. It's before I'm entitled to everything, and now I'm responsible for everything. But still, b'shvili nivra olam. This sheker that the person feels, that's what we're learning in the previous mind, but that ein lekadman. What does he feel? He feels I am intrinsically. He doesn't feel he's being created every second. It's the biggest sheker. But where's it rooted? It's rooted in Atzmos. That ein leitchila. That's the ein sof the mile mother the cats that invests that sense and creates an entity that feels it intrinsically true. Where does this come from? It's a distortion of the intrinsic truth of the Eibishter. So what's the end result to transform it? That the Eibishter himself is invested in me, and I am the geya to the whole kavanah of B'riyas Ha'olam, and everything I do matters to Atzmos. I am everything. Again, just not entitled to everything, but responsible for everything. That's the transformation of the sheker. Don't do away with it. Make it that's the whole mishkan. Make the sheker the kroshim to the mishkan, where every detail of the home is expressive of the ones who live there. That's the whole dira. And the smaller the detail, actually, the more, that's really the person. That really says you, that little trinket or whatever non-functional components of the home. That's why here the mitzvah or the pratim and the details, it's all so negeya, because that's where the etzim lies in a more transparent way, in everything, but more in the non-essential, non-functional. Etzim is about being, not about function. So it's the parts of the home that are not about function, but about being. That's where the etzim lies. So in a relationship also, it's not in the functional things. He's a good husband. He's a provider, etc. He performs as a husband. It's important. What makes him husband is not his performance. Is he sharing his himself, his being? The little interactions, they're not about performance. This way, that way, doesn't make a difference. They're not deciding the kid's future right now, or where we're going to live. We're just a little banter. It's in that little conversation that the etzim of the relationship lies. When there's no gain and there's no agenda, and there's just being. Being in the same room, not even talking. But there's a connection, a deep connection. Atzmistic connection. That's a home. You don't share with anybody else. So we take the sheker. It's all rooted, and the sheker engenders the shtus because of the sheker. Therefore, the folly. The folly is rooted in the sheker. The sheker is I'm a mitzias. That's the hergish. And therefore the shtus, it gets clouded, that time out, it just completely forgets the truth that you're not. God's right here watching this and part of this, but he's clouded by that. And we do what we do because of that sheker. It lies to the core of our consciousness, of our Nefesh Bahamas consciousness. So this is not to be destroyed, this is to be transformed. So we make the kroshim ba'if and the kroshim oimdim. So the lashon haposik is that they have to be standing upright. So the medrash, kedisa b'medrash, the medrash makes the association with this tzivui, this commandment that they should be upright. Shekroshim oimdim bedugma srofim oimdim mimaloi. So the srofim stand above him. Who is him? Is the adam shalakise. So the Indian there is that the srofim and their desire, their burning desire, to unite with Hashem, go beyond the shtalshalas adam shalakise. Right? That's the Nakuda here. Oimdim, that connects us to the Eibishter himself. Mimal loy, who's the him? The him is the Eibishter as he manifests in the Sesvidus. The Adam Ha'elyon, higher than the Adam Ha'elyon. That's the Serafim. The Rabbi talking about a Yid, the Mahalchim ben Oimdim. So when a Yid has this avoid of Serafim, so then he's much higher than the Malach. As the Novi says in describing the Shamas, he describes them as Mahalchim. He's seeing what's happening above, and he says, "I see the movers amongst the stationary ones." And who was he talking about? The movers are the Neshamas, which is a true Mahalach. We can make radical moves, and the Malach is stationary. No matter how high he ascends, he's always tethered to his original station, his basic created identity. So here the Oimdim is much higher than the Oimdim of the Serafim. So the Kivin Shinj the Nasa Davidas Adam Vasisas, who's making these kroshim? Oimdim. It's Avidas Adam, Shapel, Yisapcha Chashechlan, the Hiramir Lemisko, the Miska, and he affects transformation of darkness into light and bitterness into sweetness, which a Malach cannot do. Harizeb Oifen Shali Safa said the Avoid is far beyond Vaisafa Shali Be'erech Ube'in Arech and incomparably beyond the Avoid of and the Oimdim in Ma'aloy of the Srafim. The Avoid is effect so much so he causes Hashem to dwell in such a way Hashem dwells here in all of his glory, beyond all limit. That's why the pasuk says Genuni. The hint is Gani, but the Medrash garden. Why invoke a garden? Garden, it means Genuni, a bridal chamber, a dira, shingen hadira. And what's a dira? A dwelling place again, a home. That's where his being is, not his performance and function, but his very being. Like it says by the Beis Mikdash, Shlomo Melech built it, he said, the heavens and the heavens cannot contain it. But indeed, this house, not as a question, but as a statement of fact, indeed, yes, but this finite home, little Elam Hazeh, here's where you reside. Shadafka, the base. In this home, here's the Vashachanti. Where does it start? It doesn't start in the base of Mikdash. It starts in the heart of every Yid. They call the Div Liboy, and afterwards through the donating heart, through the benevolent heart of every Yid that prompts him to donate. So Gamba Mishkan, the Ikri Mikdash, where's he manifest also in the Mishkan, which is called the Mikdash, Vad the Mikdash Kepshutoy, the physical base of Mikdash, Vad the base of Mikdash Ashlishi, and further the evolution of the Mishkan to the Mikdash, to the final base of Mikdash, Begula, Midyas Vashleim, but Meheda V'Yameinu Mamish, Aidim Mashiach Tzidkeinu. Beis Gimel. In order to do this Avodah, to transform the shtus of the Umazeh to the craziness of Kedusha, again, a home is a crazy love. You don't love your spouse and children based on an agenda. It's boundless. Allah says, to make from the lie of the world the standing beams. It said before, from the Mahalchim ben the Oimdim, and the Oimdim, where does we touch and where do we reach? As we learned to the previous time about him, that the pillar connects the floor to the highest levels of the palace. So that's what a pillar is. That's why you need a pillar. You don't need a pillar if the distance between the ceiling and the floor is not that great. Why do you need a pillar? Because otherwise they're not connected. So that's the whole point of connecting the Maila Mata to the Mata Mata. It's all part of it. So you need the Oimdim, and in a way of Mahalchim ben Oimdim, not the Oimdim of the Srafim, but the Oimdim, what a Yid is. So for that, the Lo Pashut is not simple. Yesh Seir Binyan Shal Milchamba, this is a Milchamba, because the Nefesh HaBahamis clings mightily to, I'm also Metzias. Do what you want, but leave me alone. Just remind us as a kid in class. So I once told you, we learned a lot, the truth. We laughed a lot too. It was very good. We laughed and learned. And so there's one of the kids there, I'm not say his name, he could be even watching the shir. And the teacher was, I don't know what. So finally he gives a geshrei, leave me alone. I mean, he spoke perfect English, but he said he said it with an accent. Leave me alone. The teacher just backed off. Okay, sure. The whole class burst into laughter, and the teacher backed off. That Nefesh HaBahamis says, leave me alone. So it's a milchama. And to overcome the milchama. So we can't go, at the end of the day, it's not with counter arguments and not with all kinds of agendas. Yeah, but Yiddishkeit is better, and look what you gain, Leilam Hazel, Leilam Haba, and he says, I don't care. I don't care. Good for you, good for you. Turns you on, that's fine. But this is our generation. Our generation, the kids, all of the old candies and agendas and then rewards, and become a lamdim and tamid chacham and Leilam Haba, and the philosophy and the theology. No. So what touches them? One thing, etzem hanefesh. The etzem hanefesh oz bevad yinatzech, then he's certain of victory. When you possess, and now the union of the whole union of the Gila de Milchama. In the East of the Medrash says, the Eibishter, remember we had this, the Eibishter, Moishe asked the Eibishter, what's your name? What should I tell them? So the Eibishter said, I'm called according to my actions. If in my sani nikra. And the Medrash goes on to say that when am I called Shani Akrish Baruch and Hashem Tzvokos? When is Hashem called Tzvokos? Al Shem Shenilchem B'Yam Rashoim, when he does battle with the Rashoim. Now it's interesting here. This or Aleph, you see it there? Yeah, Aleph. That Aleph is from the Rebbe. Now, it's clear that the larger typeface Tilim pays what Rebbe wrote. Now they're saying, where it is. Was he talking to? Which Tilim? It's capital Pei Pasuk Chof. And in brackets, they tell us the pasuk that says, "Havayli kim tzvokos." The pasuk goes, "Ashiveni, help me." So I'm not sure. The Rebbe has to tell us where this pasuk is. Where the name tzvokos appears in Tilim. It's all over. So why is he sending his lachuri? Look at Rashi there. So Rashi makes the point that in the course of this capital, in Pasuk Dalet, only one name of Hashem is mentioned. In Pasuk Ches, two names. In Pasuk Chav, Havayli kim tzvokos. And Rashi says it all depends on the battle, on the golos, the various golos that Yidden will face. So we need divine assistance in greater measure. So it seems this what Rebbe is pointing to is this Pasuk and perhaps Rashi to bring out that when is tzvokos invoked when there's a greater hell of Esther, a greater golus, a greater battle. I'm suggesting that's maybe why we get that Maramokim there. There's a few these are things that the Rebbe added when the mind was submitted there. And we'll see if there were some questions they asked that the Rebbe answered. We'll see later. Continuing. The figure of my Morim did not have many Maramakimis. The Rebbe was the editor. He Bechlal gave no Maramakimis in the goof of the mind, which is why Bim Koim is such a big deal. The Rebbe made footnotes, but only for those things which were unusual Makidas or would add some insight. If you look at the figure of my Morim, there's very few sources. But the Rebbe instructed him from himself, look at the Sichos and so on, for this Dur Yosem, this orphan generation, everything needs a source. He brings Bereshis Bora Likim, just say Bereshis Aleph Aleph. Thankfully, otherwise we'd be lost. Everything is source. So these guys, when they republish BASI Legani, of course, Teres Menachem, as an old modern, there's copious footnotes and sources for everything. Today, it's a simple thing to find. But before the advent of, before the computer, before all these things were uploaded, how did they find everything? So there's a few people that they always turn to, Melech Tzvibel and Shalom Arozov. These are walking encyclopedias. Eventually, the guys started to find out themselves. A lot of stuff repeats itself, and you get the hang of where to start looking. All over Kabbalah, Medr, Zoya, where you find these sources. So the Chassidim that wrote the Maimorim, they get to know all this stuff. Gedenk Shalom Arozov Yossi, an extraordinary Jew, uncle of Mendel Morozov here, was here. Continuing, I go on the Olam Kol HaTorah Kula, Mamash. Kabbalah, Chassidus, Nigla, everything. I mean, Kabbalah, even Sfarim that no one, everything. Push it, everything. Let's go further. So the Medrash says, when is he called Tzvokos? Hashem shenilcham imarushoyim. When he battles, Hashem tells Moishe, the wicked I'm called Tzvokos. So through this inyan of Hashem battling the wicked, this arouses the union of Netzach Yisrael Lo Yishak. Excuse me. Pasuk then Shmuel, the story with Shaul, that Hashem is the eternal one of Israel will not lie. The context there is that Shaul loses the monarchy. So what's the Rebbe saying here? Nitzachen is bound up with Lo Yishaker. We're talking here about transforming the sheker. As he says in the brackets, Heipech the sheker ha'olam. So the Eibishter is aroused and invests and gives us this Neitzach Yisrael Lo Yishaker Lifel Anitzochem B'Milchama, in order that the victory should happen. Shemisnaheles, who conducts this battle? Al Didei Tzivis Havaya Yidden, that are called Hashem's hosts, soldiers. Shebeshem Zeh. Now, the association between the Eibush Shem Tzvokos is when there's a battle to be fought, and He gives us the koyach, and who's fighting it? Us. Him through us. Shebeshem Zeh Nikra B'nei Yisrael. Shebeshem Zeh, the name Tzivis Hashem Nikra B'nei Yisrael. When a Yidden called this, when does this start? B'tzeisem Eretz Mitzrayim, when they left Mitzrayim, Golos Horish. From the first Golos, going out of that Golos, that's when Yidden are first called Tzivis Hashem. And from then on, every individual Jew and the Yidden collectively are called Yotzei Tzava B'Yisrael. This is a pasuk talking about the census for all those who are to be counted in the army. But he's using this in the broad sense, because first of all, the census of the Yidden included their soulmates and family. They were like neshamas klolius in a small sense. It included all Yidden. Chalakash, only counting them. What about the women? What about the children? The people older than 60? They don't count. And seriously, these were the neshamas, cluster souls, that this between 20 and 60 embodied that family unit. So every Yid is a Yotzei Tzava B'Yisrael. That he carries out the tafkidoi, the mission entrusted to him. I was created to serve my master in this lowest world. What's the mission? To illuminate the darkness of the world. To the victory of the war, with the darkness and the concealment and the covering and so on. Now comes the Nakodah. In order to effect this victory, so the treasures are squandered, are opened up, and are cast out, as it were, and given to the soldier on the front. Like we see in earthly kingship. When the kingdom is at stake, so then there's no limits, and the king opens up all the treasures of and the treasures of his forebearers. Usually the king doesn't use it for his own needs. Nonetheless, he uses them now to achieve victory in way of bizbos, in other words, without a cheshbon, and even if it's not going to be used and wasted to some degree, still it's poured and given in order to bring about the victory of the milchama. Through the fact that it's given through the anshe milchama, the soldier. So what is this? So there's the treasure of the Eibishter that is given to the soldiers, to his host, that's us. What is this treasure? So the Gemara says, it's famous Gemara, everything is in the hands of heaven, except for the fear of heaven. And the Gemara describes there the fear of heaven as an oitzel shel yirah shamayim. The only thing, the fear of heaven, is that which God keeps as a treasure. This is the treasure of the fear of heaven that the person himself needs to offer Hashem. So this, this is granted. It's a bit of estira. But the whole point of the Gemara is that everything is in the hands of heaven except for the fear of heaven. That's our choice. And and when we give that to the Eibusha, that's the one thing he treasures. That's the only thing he treasures. That's his oitza. That's the big pasuk there. That what's the heavenly treasure is the fear of heaven. So the Kudah seems to be that we are empowered for this by heaven itself with his heavenly treasure, which we didn't have to give back to him, as it were, and offer it to him. But we are granted it.
Some translate it different. Everything's in the hands of the Eibusha. If you ask him for something, yes or no, but chutz miYerushalayim, that he has to do.
Yeah. We said that part. We shared that from some person. Yeah. That's kind of the point over here. If you really want and you're in the battle, then you get it. It's really the point you're saying here. So and it's also the idea that the Gemara says he brings in Tanya. If the Eibusha wouldn't help a Yid in his battle with his Yitzhar, he wouldn't be able to overcome him. So there's the heavenly assistance, the treasure, by which we are victorious. From the part of B'Shalom Nafshi, to what degree we achieve victory in a peaceful way, part of B'Shalom Nafshi. But the enemy is vanquished, but the enemy is transformed. We will become a Mokem Mishamit in the part of B'Shalom. It's explained in other places, in many places, that the true peaceful redemption is where there's no battle at all. There's no need for a battle because the enemy sees and wants to be part of this truth. Part of B'Shalom, as the pasuk says, I was redeemed in peace, mikravli, from the battle that surrounds me to the end, through the, as you're saying here, the revelation of the etzem HaNefesh. Here, the victory is a peaceful one. As it was to some degree the time of Shlomo HaMelech. It was called Shlomo because Shlomo, the Eibusha told David, it should be called Shlomo. Of peace and tranquility I will grant the Yidden in his days. So there was no need for wars like David had to engage in. We say to him, moreover, that wasn't the ultimate because it didn't last. Like if our generation will affect this peace in the final goals, which will be forever, but be as Mashiach Tzidkein. We continue Be'ez Hashem tomorrow, Perek Daled, Perek Yud Beis.